Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and a lot of folks voted to see this reel serviced. And it's sent to me by one of our viewers, Dick. He's in Philadelphia, and he said this one's bogged down with grease. Well, it's kind of hard to tell if that's the case, but we're going to find out for sure. And I got to be honest with you, it's been some time since I've worked on one of these guys. So if I struggle along the way, you'll understand why. But for the most part, I kind of have a memory of how this goes. And I was fortunate enough to go on the Orca site. And sure enough, they have the manual for the reel. So I would recommend, if you're into old fishing reels, go ahead and sign up for that. Kind of tells us a little bit about what to expect on the inside, and I kind of know what to expect there, so we're in good stead. I didn't check the box for the handle or the nut cap. I assume that they're in there somewhere, and I'll show you how to take it apart. But right now, this is a little tight. Not a little tight, it's a lot of tight. It does have an interesting bail. We'll show you that in a little bit, how that bail system works. And there's no ball bearings in this one, so that kind of makes it a little bit easier. And the first thing everybody looks at is, how in the world do I even separate the case, right? Well, there are two screws here, and those are the secrets to getting the case separated and getting this reel started. So let's go ahead and do that. There's a long screw and a short screw. And at this point, even though I have a schematic there, I recommend to anybody servicing older reels, particularly if you don't have the schematic, and as a general practice throughout, I tell you to take pictures along the way, because those pictures will be invaluable should you get stuck on the way back in terms of reassembling. And quite honestly, you've seen a couple of my projects about reels in a bag. I got a couple more coming that folks have started and then got stuck along the way on reassembly. So don't trust your memory all the time. I certainly don't. And take the pictures and don't be timid about it. All right, well, I'm going to probably agree with Dick that this is bogged down with old grease, because the old grease on this one, just pulling that screw out, is quite noticeable. All right, once you do that, interestingly enough, this is kind of like the newer Shimano's. The handle side comes off, not the other side. So we'll should be able to pull it down and out. There you go. And you'll notice in the back here, we're not going to do anything other than flood it, but in the back is that little trip clicker, the anti-reverse. And we're going to next take the shaft off so that we can get to this gear. Because if you look at the gear, it's kind of an interesting little setup here, right? It's how in the world does this thing work? Well, you have a through shaft, and you actually have a catch mechanism on this side that's going to attach to this. And well, let's just kind of take it all apart and show you. I'm going to put these into a parts tray. I'm going to come up top here, and we're going to remove the top end assembly, because that's going to be required in order to do the rest of this reel. This one's got an interesting little drag system in it, and I think that even though these drag washers are probably not available any longer, I think where you would go with this is to use a pen drag washer, because I'm looking at this. This is your pressure plate and your washer. The washer's on the back here. It looks like it's some kind of a felt washer, but I'm thinking that washer, if it's not the same size as a Jigmaster, you have room here, and my guess is a Penn Jigmaster washer could be substituted should you need one. You'll also notice that there's a spring mechanism inside this cap, that little washer was on top, and that the nut goes inside the case like this. So best to kind of take pictures along the way so you know. I'm just going to put that in as it is. Then we should be able to remove the spool. Well, here's a kind of a fun thing, right? If you look at this, it's got two little kind of teardrops with a hole in the middle of it, and that actually acts as your catch for your bail. So when you pull it this way, you'll see that you have a short arm here, and when you pull it, that little arm goes into the hole. And then as you circle this around for the trip, if I'm going in the right direction, I'm not sure I'm going in the right direction at the moment. Well, at any rate, it will trip it back. we'll do that later. And then there's another piece that you need to know there's a lot of things you need to know as we do this. But one is that axle shaft, I'm just going to put some penetrating oil on it. That axle shaft does not travel straight through here. It would be impossible, right? You have a through axle this way. You couldn't have a full axle down. That axle shaft actually stops right here and screws into this block. So the next step then in removal then is to get a small, and this one is 9/32 wrench, and you're going to have to pull it. Be careful. It is into what I'll call a pot metal frame there. But this is how you remove the axle shaft on this reel. So it's different, if you will, in what we're accustomed to seeing. And then down below here we have a little bit of junk, so he is right on the junk front, and these parts will need to be cleaned. But that's your axle shaft with your thread. Then we have the full axle shaft through here. So let's see. Yep. Hey, how do you like that? They actually use the same wrench on two things. All right. Hold this side. This side's actually attaching the main gear. Just work the collar off. Now, with the fully assembled reel, there's a nut cap on this side, or there's a handle on this side, depending on which side you chose to put the handle on. And but usually it's a nut cap on this side, and the handle goes on this side here. So pull that out, totally remove it, as you can see. Okay, so once you remove that little cap nut then, you should be able to push or pull this through. That's a through shaft. There we go. That one came out relatively easy. Then you can see the little crosswind block that you've been dealing with. This one has the catch for the screw shaft of your axle. That's how that was installed. Here's your little stud that's going to ride in your main gear. Speaking of your main gear, this is your main gear here. And then what we want to do then is complete the servicing of that. We got to come back up top here and work on this. So we mentioned this is your little set for your bail throw, and this should be a 13 millimeter. I think I tested that out previously. So you have a 13 millimeter here. Notice the orientation. It's a good place to take pictures. Kind of a unique bail trip system, but take the pictures so that you know that this teardrop is facing the bail spring piece. And you'll notice that there's two little slots, actually there's two pieces here, two little slots that mount on the stud here. And then with any luck, this assembly will just pull right up. Oh, and we got luck. So the reason I said that is I believe this is a separate washer. Yeah, it is. There's a separate washer here that acts as the lock nut in the channels there. Sometimes that grabs the pinion gear a little bit aggressively because of dirt, and we've seen the dirt in this reel. So just know that you may have to work that out. Up top here, as I mentioned, there is no bearing here. There is a little washer, and the pinion gear then is held on with a little clip here. So let's get that out of the way. So there's a little screw. Don't lose that. If you lose any of these if you lose any pieces of a reel of this, you're really going for the whole thing. Notice that it's got a little groove in it, so the point came out this way. Kind of hard to misinstall that, I believe, but who knows. Okay, now I think that the trick here, if I remember, you have to pull up on the pinion gear, and then you can pull out with the main gear. There you go. And then remember this this washer up top here. I'm just going to lay these on my desk because we're not going far with these. Then you can push down to get that. So this is the whole bottom assembly then, right? We have the gear, and this looks like it's stainless. It looks like it's a nice example of mid-50s type of materials. Get some dirt in here. Let's clean that out. Make sure all your channels are nice and clean when you're doing this type of a reel. I'm going to use a brush here to kind of kick that out. Paper towel. I'm not sure if you're seeing that, so let's make sure that we do that again here. Okay, that's nice and clear. And just check the case. The case is clean. Looks like maybe just a little bit of it. So we had dried grease in here. Looks like the penetrating oil did its work for the most part. And I don't intend to do anything more here other than put this back in and just continue with the servicing. So this is really about just making sure that the gears are nice and lubed up. Give ourselves a good dose of grease there. And we're going to just go reinsert this in. Bring that up. Remember we had this little washer here. That goes on next. Sometimes easier said than done. Okay. Then we have the main gear. You want to make sure that's clean. It's clean in the back here. If it weren't clean, you'd go through the same thing. Check the teeth on the main gear. It seems like it's aluminum. Make sure that the groove is clear. That's where this thing is going to ride. We saw the stud when we pulled that out. You want to make sure you get grease into the channel where that stud is going to work. And you want to make sure that the teeth get a good dose of grease since it's been some time. And what grease has been in here seems to have been all dried out. Notice the back here. We have a kind of a V-notch. And that's where that shaft that I just pulled out is going to sit, right? That's how you're going to lock that in, like that. It's going to lock in and hold that tight. So we can go ahead and put the gear back in. And then we have the crosswind block that I was showing you before. Make sure that that's clean. Get a little bit of grease on the stud. That's basically the only piece that's going to be traveling. Make sure that the top is nice and clear. And you want to, this is going to be your through channel, right, where your shaft is going to ride through. You want to make sure this is down. I hope you were paying attention to that. If you weren't, that's where you're going to go take your pictures again. You're going to set the stud into the channel where it's going to ride. Align that, and then we can bring the shaft. I should put a little bit of grease on that. It was tight coming out, so let's make sure that we do a good job of cleaning it up. Feel it with your fingers. While we're doing this, I'm going to just thank our first responders and frontline personnel for the tremendous efforts that they're putting in and helping us to try and contain and overcome this terrible issue here with the COVID. And your efforts really are appreciated. Being on the front lines day in and day out has got to be totally wearying, and you've certainly earned my respect in terms of the efforts that you're putting in to help us all stay safe and overcome the issues of the day. Just having a little bit of a short issue here. It's nothing more than me struggling with this. I'll just do this again. There we go. We should be able to just push the piece through now. Make sure you seat with that gear, just like that. And then we can go grab that little button that's to tie down here, just to hold that in place. I'm not sure there's an exact sequence in terms of how you do it. I guess if you're at the the factory there would be an exact sequence that you probably would follow, but I'm not at the factory. This is kind of reverse engineering, and it's been a while, as I mentioned, since I've done one of these, so I'll settle for getting them all back in the right places as opposed to the sequence that I'm using for this. And I'm hand tightening this. It's kind of a nice thing in terms of credit to the folks that were building these to begin with, because if I can hand tighten a reel that was manufactured all those years ago, well, that's quite an accomplishment, right? All right, looks like I have a little bit of string on the side here. Let's get that string off. And this is actually your click mechanism. It's kind of funny as that runs, but underneath the drag system, that you'll see where that's going to be clicking. All right, this screws into the hole there. Let's get that set up. Oops, can't do that yet. I want to take our we want to push down on our pinion gear. Then we want to grab the little tie down. Make sure it nests into a groove. There's a groove there. You'll see it when you're up close and personal with this. Then let's get our screw in. And those of you that watch me know that from time to time, me and little pieces and parts require a little extra effort. So if you want to get a little cup of coffee right now, go right ahead. All right, so that takes the slack out of the pinion gear and enables you to turn. That's turning nice and smooth now. All right, we're going to reinstall this. As I mentioned, there's nothing going on back here. This is the only important part to that. Got a lot of grease transferring from my glove to the assembly, so let's go ahead and just make sure that we're good there. I'm going to put this in without that lock washer for a moment. Now we can put the lock washer in. There's two sides to the lock washer. There's two dimples. Those are going to go up. And this also has a flat section, so you have to align the flat section with the flat position in the pinion gear first, and then spin the rotor so that you can align the slots just like that. Then we have the two little springs, teardrops, whatever they want to call these things. I'm sure it's on that piece over there that I just haven't looked at. I'm going to put those on, make sure that they're nestled over those little dimple studs. And we can put our nut back on. And tighten that first, and then like the last turn with the ratchet. This turns clockwise. We're going to take that shaft. Now we can go back in through. That came out a little tough. I cleaned it up, but let's make sure we put a little grease on there so that it comes back in the right way. Through the pinion gear, and then line this up with that crosswind block, and I'll show you in a moment. It's kind of hard to see, but line it up and then make sure you can get that screwed in. And it's beautiful. By hand I'm being able to turn that. And the last turn you want to take, maybe turn it this way, tighten it up. And then this one I didn't tighten fully there. Okay. All right, so let's just kind of go over what we did then. We reset this, we set the teardrop clip, we tightened it all down, we've got our little assembly in, we've greased all of our gears. We can kind of give it a turn now because all that's left is the outer body. And you can see how the piece works. All right, and then we're going to put the body back on. So this actually slips under the wings here, just like that. And then there's a stud up top that's holding the top in. And then we have those two screws. The long screw belongs on the bottom. short screw on the top. So if you like this kind of thing, I ask you to subscribe. I try to post on a regular basis. It's not just old reels, it's kind of every reel, not every reel, but most of the reels that show up in my mail or from customers who bring them in. And look at that. Hey, John. I want to keep wanting to call you John. Dick, this is it's a whole different experience than what it just was, isn't it? All right, got the spool goes. Time to put the spool on then. So there's a little washer here, and then there's a metal washer that goes on top of that. Then this should just snap in. There we go. You want to align there's 2 holes and 2 studs. You want to align those. Then we're going to have our spring goes next, and our spring cap. That's going to be your tensioner. You want to get that started. There we go. And we have a little spring cap goes in the top, and we have the tie down screw. So that's it. That's essentially how you do an Ocean City 300. It's an old school reel, kind of some funky little tricks in there, some interesting engineering. But you know what? This one can still go fishing. There you go, tighten, and then I like to back them off once they're tight. And I imagine that there is a handle in here somewhere. I'll just turn it by hand, just to kind of show you how that's working. But that's the reel. That's how you take it apart. That's how you service, clean, and reinstall. So I hope you've enjoyed that. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching. So I just found the handle, so why not, right? Why not just finish this by showing you how that works. That's it. That's your Ocean City 300 fishing reel. Hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you.